Who could forget the 3 R's? Reading, writing, arithmetic. The smell of new crayons. The sound of the bell at recess. You know, many lasting relationships had their beginnings right here in the classroom and hallways that Colonial Heights used to teach her children. And those children learned much more than the material in their textbooks.
My whole family went to Floor Hill School. My husband was Milton Cheeley. I called him Chick. And he had Mrs. Sara Bell Smith Fewer when he was in the 2nd grade. I had her when I was in the 7th grade. She was my favorite teacher. We even invited her to our parties when we had them. My son, Tazewell Cheeley, was in Mrs. Fewer's 2nd grade. My daughter, Deborah Cheeley Bowles, went to the Floor Hill School, and Mrs. Fewer was her principal. So we are a Florian Hill family and a Mrs. Fewer family. So we feel like we had lots of good things with that.
I always wanted to be a teacher. When I was in the grade school at Jackson School in Petersburg, Virginia, we had to line up at the back of the school to go in. And one day, my line just would not get in line. And I got out of the line, we were waiting for the teacher, and got them, I was getting them all straight in the line, and the teacher came out. And she said, "What are you doing out of line?" I said, "Well, I'm just helping to get them in line." She says, "Well, you'll go to the principal this afternoon." Well, that scared me to death. Miss Lanny Scott was the principal. So I went to her, and she asked what I was doing there, and I explained it to her. She said, "Well, why were you doing that?" I said, "Well, I always say that I'm going to be a teacher when I grow up, and I was just practicing." She said, "Well, you did a good job. Now, you run on home, and I know you're going to make an excellent teacher." And that inspired me through my teaching years. I know you're going to be an excellent teacher. Well, I can't say that I was excellent, but her telling me that made me go on and helped me to overcome many obstacles that I met.
When I was in elementary school, I went to Florian Hill for grades 1 through 4. And then I went to the junior high school, and then I went to North Elementary, and then I went back to the junior high school for 7th and 8th grade, and then I went to Colonial Heights High School and finished up my years there. In elementary school, I remember winning a poster contest and got free tickets to go see Alice in Wonderland in the Jane Bryant's Children's Theater. My mother took me to a lot of those productions. My mother and father took me to a lot of those productions, and I enjoyed them a lot. And then when I was in middle school, I was SCA secretary, and Mrs. Abercrombie, who's still at the middle school, was the SCA sponsor. And I have a lot of fond memories of being in her 5th period class with, I think it was Nikki Fisher, Lavelle Powers, Scott Marjorie. They were all SCA officers.
I have a lot of fond memories about this town. I think I've always liked the smallness of it. It's almost getting too big at this point, but it was enjoyable growing up. Went to Florian Hill School, and then what is now the middle school was the elementary school at that time, and then I graduated from what is now the middle school. The high school was in there as well in 1963. And I can remember being a little girl when I lived on Dupie Avenue, and there was a store up on the boulevard, and my mother and I would walk up to that store, and there was I guess it was a farmhouse. I can't really remember exactly, but they had horses, and she would let me take an apple and feed the horse, and I always thought that was just the neatest thing to be able to do that.
I think we still do, and at that time they had one of the great school systems in the state of Virginia, and Sara Smith, she was one of my favorites and still is, teacher.
I grew up going to school at Colonial, at Flora Hill School, and I lived in awe of Miss Hill. When I came back to Colonial Heights, we lived away from here for 1 year. Came back and I was a school teacher, and so Miss Hill had me substitute up at Hill School. Well, I walked in there and I was just as scared then as I was when I was a pupil there. I didn't have the lunch money down at the precise time. She informed me that it had to be at the cafeteria at 9:04, and that was how precise she was. But it was a wonderful atmosphere for the children to grow up in and to learn in. I think it really made the people appreciate learning and discipline, and they have never really got over the awe that they had for Miss Hill.
My granddaughter, this was very traumatic for me, just entered the middle school, which, me having gone to the same building, my daughter going to school there too, made the third generation going to school in the same building. So that was kind of neat. I remember a few things about high school. I remember that the school passed a rule that the girls couldn't wear culottes or split skirts. The guys could not wear t-shirts. They had to wear dress shirts. We couldn't get within 10 or 12 inches of someone of the opposite sex. Now, this was like in 1960. A bunch of girls, not me of course, but a bunch of girls decided to wear black the next day. And we were all standing outside of school, and the Progress Index came up and took a picture of us. So that's the first protest I can ever remember, ever being done in this area, and we were doing it. So that was kind of neat. We didn't make the paper.
We had wonderful schools. I'm sure everybody's reiterated on Miss Flora Hill and Miss Sara Fuller. I went through that school. All of my brothers and sisters did. I was the youngest of 8. And I have 2 daughters, and they both went through the Flora Hill School and the Colonial Heights schools. Most of my memories of Colonial Heights are when I was a child and living on the boulevard, and my father ran a service station, Jolly's Amico station on the boulevard, and that's over where the glass place is now, in the service station. And my uncle, Mr. R.E. Long, owned the home right next to there between Richmond Avenue and Norfolk Avenue, and behind his home he had a large building which had a pool table in it, and all of the men of the neighborhood would gather every night after dinner and go in and shoot pool. That was Mr. Stewart Driscoll and Mr. Bushon, who's had a store right on the boulevard there, Bushon's Grocery, and all of the men would gather there and go, and all the women would gather on the porches and sit and talk, and the kids would all play out in the yards. So that's really the fond memories I have of Colonial Heights.
I was supposed to have gone to Chester High School.
Yeah.
And they said that being as close to Petersburg as we were, it was cheaper. See, the county had to pay the tuition.
Yeah.
We all went to Petersburg, or most of us did, went to Petersburg.
Yeah.
Until...
They paid the tuition, and you had to finish your own transportation. Of course,
Yeah.
no buses and no streetcars and no nothing.
That's right.
You walked.
I have 5 girls. My oldest one went to Flora Hill, and I'd walk with her down there and go meet her in the afternoons. And then they started building other schools. Every kid in this Colonial Heights has to go through that middle school. All of mine did. And that was before they built the high school too. And I'm just waiting for them to get something done with the traffic. And at high school, put an overpass so the kids can cross over instead of holding up traffic like I do every morning.
I can remember when I got out of Flora Hill School, I went to junior high school in Petersburg and Petersburg High School. So the building of the high school, which originally housed, I think, grades 6 through 12, and then eventually the building of what we call the new high school in 1964, 65, 30 years ago, no longer new. Then 3 elementary schools. So, I mean, you've got 5 school systems. When I was in elementary school, it was all part of Colonial Heights, was a part of Chesterfield school system. So I think that's a big change. I think the quality that we offer our kids here in Colonial Heights speaks for itself. I think our test scores we have good students. Any little society, there's always some problems, but we have good students, and our test scores rank up among the tops in the state. So we're proud of that.
The first reading textbook that they used was Dick and Jane. Dick and Jane was changed when we started the new Lippincott series, which was a phonetic approach to reading. We were the first school system in the state of Virginia to use the Lippincott program. And so therefore we had many newspaper articles about it and how successful our students were in reading. North Elementary was built in around 1959. The third elementary school was Lakeview, which came 10 years later in 1969 because of overcrowding at Hill and North. It was named, of course, Lakeview, and North had over 750 students at the time. After the closing of the Flora M. Hill School, then Tussin was built in 1975. I remember going to my first principal's conference with Miss Four, who was a principal of the Hill School. And the principal of Lakeview was Robert Edwards. And so she made this statement. Here we were on the way to Roanoke, and she said, well, it looks like I could do better than this. Robert Edwards is a former missionary. And here I'm going with Robert Edwards and Marvin Clipp, who is a preacher. A girl just can't have any fun.
And I started school in D.M. Brown School in Petersburg for 1 year. Then we moved over here on Hamilton Avenue in Reading from Harry L. Sneed. And I started the second grade here at Flora M. School. And I would like to say this to this day, that I'm going to school and I hear so much controversy about teaching the kids this and teaching the kids that. Everybody well respected the teachers here in Colonial Heights, Flora Hill School, and we learned stuff over there. And that wasn't a whole lot of messing around and stuff like you hear about today. They teach your children this and teach your children that. Is that they got to have respect for their teachers and also for themselves, and so the parents have got to help them there.
I started school at the Colonial High School in the first grade. We had the safety patrol in the school. We had other activities such as playing marbles, which was everybody liked to do back then in those days. We had a fine principal, Mrs. Hill. I can recall during the safety patrol, they used to take us to Washington to the parade and sightseeing trip. I can remember the streetcars running. I can remember when the buses replaced the streetcar. We used to stand up there and wait for that first bus to come down the highway. They turned around at Mr. Short had a service station up there on the corner of Brandon Bridge Road and the Boulevard. He had a livery stable, a service station. We used to go up and buy cigarettes. He'd sell us 2 cigarettes for a penny, take them out of a mayonnaise jar.
It was 6 of us in our family. I had 5 brothers. And Ms. Jackson and Ms. Andrews taught all 6 of us. It was 6 classes. We had a big auditorium. We had an outside John. And we didn't have a lot of toys and things like other schools had, but they finally got us a ball and bat and some swings. And we had a good time, and they were wonderful teachers. They really did teach you.
I've been a resident of Colonial Heights since I was 2 years old. And I was chasing my wife ever since I was about 7 or 8. We both went to Flora M. School in Colonial Heights. And Miss Hill, if she was living today and met me on the street, she would call me by my name. She wouldn't say hi. She'd say, "Hi, Richard, how you doing?" Because I think she remembered every person's name that ever went to Flora M. School. And, of course, Flora M. School was, a lot of time during Halloween was our playground. We'd play different jokes on different people, and including her, and including Sara Bell Smith. And But we never were punished with it because I don't think everybody knew who we were. I mean, who really done it? And I'm not going to say right now either who really done it because I want to go away with that.